It's funny how you live in a conservative culture. You live here in the South, and you think people generally have a stronger freedom orientation than elsewhere in the country, and they do. But we have been so long under commercial government in the South and in the United States that we have barely a sense of the antithesis between the freedom of movement, the freedom of activity, versus the regulatory suppressive claims of states, governments, and even of cities. Yesterday, the city council voted 7-1 to ban the free exercise of the marketplace in many parts of the city. And that would include all those parts in the map of Chattanooga where people live, and they are outside what's called an overlay map, a short-term vacation rental district map that was entirely a work of politics. It's entirely a work of haggling, negotiation, and people speaking on behalf of other people, speaking over the use of other people's property, elected officials and members of neighborhood associations and the like who wanted or didn't want to be included in that district. It is a district that is highly, highly vulnerable to legal challenge. And what we have to have come forth are people who see the antithesis between liberty and oppression, and who are willing to stand on their rights. Now, there are one or two people like that, but they are very few. And they are those who are indignant that they can't do something that is harmless and innocent, and in fact serving other people, serving in fact visitors who come to Chattanooga and who would rather stay in a private dwelling and pay to stay there than to stay in a corporate oriented business that would be a hotel or an inn or a lodge or a motel. These travelers would rather stay in an Airbnb situation or situation like it. There are several other platforms. Airbnb is the biggest one, the one that everyone knows about, and so I use it Airbnb as a name for this industry, though it is simply one of the competitors in it. This is David Tulis with Nooga Radio. We're brought to you by Nooganomics. Nooganomics is the website for the man who matters, and it's not popular. It's not popular because I think really very few people matter. And the ones who do go there, the ones who are earnest not to miss anything that we have to report, subscribe. You can subscribe to it. It's free. It is published by the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga, and that's me, David Tulis, your host here at 92.7 FM and AM 1240. Also, a terrific long-distance channel, 95.3 FM HD for Nooga Radio. We cover local economy and the free market here in Chattanooga and beyond. Brought to you by Clay Whitaker, the attorney. We argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. City Council yesterday, in 7-1 vote, made it clear that it doesn't love its neighbor and that it has a kind of pecuniary, jealous interest in regulation. The deep story of its move is even a move supported even by conservatives, such as Darren Ledford, and even the sponsor of the bill, a conservative man politically, probably a Trump person, or probably very conservative Republican, Chip Henderson. These are men who are called conservatives, and they cannot escape the paradigm of commercial government. They cannot escape the claims of their time, that is to say, of the continuing hovering presence of government, of the police, over private activity, which is harmless, in which there really is no victim. There is no victim. There's no real danger in that marketplace, a marketplace generated by powerful servers run by Airbnb, a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded business, and which provides a connection, a connectivity through the internet between visitors to Chattanooga and many other cities and the people who live there, people who own houses, either living in them and being absent from them for a time, or owning houses and as investment properties that now generate more than the sale, the profit from the flip of the house, but generate an income by being there and being managed by the owner who's somewhere else. The income stream created by the visitors who come. Some of them come in turbans, some of them come in fine suits made in Italy, some from Australia, visitors from South Africa, from all around the world. One woman who spoke yesterday before the council said that she'd had 200 people who had been her guests. I think she was getting married just before she'd gotten married, and I'm referring here to a very lovely couple, Blake and Lexi Bozarth, both of whom spoke to the council. But not they, like many others, said we have an ordinance, it is inevitable, therefore let's have the best we can. And so even people who are in Airbnb, not seeing the distinction sufficiently, or not willing to risk saying anything about that distinction, but just playing along, said, well, we'd rather have the ordinance as originally proposed by Chip Henderson without the amendments. The amendments were seen as particularly vicious and were not passed. One of the ideas floated in the proceedings was to have a 1,000-foot protective zone around every school that happens to be in the map of permission, the area in the city that would be or is going to be permitted under license and permit to have these visitors under the Airbnb trading platform. The city is voting against the internet. Effectively, the city is raising a Beijing wall, like the censors in Beijing, the censors in other countries where you have the party, red or green or of whatever color, the party prohibiting certain expressions, prohibiting the communication of ideas, and blocking and banning activity, whether of ideas or commerce or connections or services or favors or photos or anything else. That's what the Beijing Wall is about. You find it in all oppressive tyrannies, whether it's that below the equator of Mr. Chavez, or even in our country. Our country is not a free country, and yet we all think we're free. And because we're so used to the forms of oppression, the forms of prohibition, we are under constant prohibitions in many areas of our life. We're under prohibitions on insurance, on the use of plants for hallucinogenic and pleasurable purposes. We're under all kinds of prohibitions and bans that the rights of the free people of our state are largely gone. They're largely out of view. Very few people know how to defend their rights, whether over a question such as the usurpacious power of a municipal corporation, or dealing with an officer on the side of the street who's demanding to search the trunk of the car. What are your rights? What can you say? What do you need to know about his authority, and whether his authority at a particular moment is his exercise of personal authority in his person, or is it really a lawful exercise of authority under the law, right? There are two kinds of authority, and often officers, whether regulators or police officers, who act against members of the public or in confronting members of the public, very often operate personally and sometimes vindictively apart from lawful authority. That is always the question. We are in an era where the use and exercise of liberty is a rare thing. We exercise it in parts. We exercise it flimsily and weakly, not too aggressively, not too assertively. We exercise our liberty by permission. In a way, one can say that City Council, in rejecting the internet, I would say symbolically in a way, but also practically, it's rejecting the internet because it's going to outlaw, in its ordinance that takes effect in October, outlaw the innocent, private, and harmless use by homeowners and property owners of their houses. And that is the fact that has happened, and there's very little sense of offense. The City Council members, even the conservatives such as Ken Smith, gave very, very little sense of the wrong and injury done to, I would say, hundreds of people outside their whimsical district who are going to face a ban. They're going to be facing charges, civil charges. They'll be facing enforcement letters from Donna Williams, the official in the hilariously misnamed Economic Development Office serving Mayor Burke. Enforcement letters, threats, and then finally citations to court. Process being served by process servers serving the city, while the county, the sheriff's department, they will be brought to Sessions Court, the county court. maybe that or the city court, and they'll be facing the ordinance, which has a clearly illegal line in it. It's a single line that says that the fine for operating illegally in the new regime is $50 a day. That is simply unenforceable. It is simply unenforceable. Cities do not have punitive authority, period. They do not have punitive authority. This is, and that Wade Hinton would let that go through, since he is really the man in charge of the city, is really amazing. I'm just amazed, and I'm impressed. I'm impressed that he defended it, even though he knows that there are two major Chattanooga decisions out of the Supreme Court: City of Chattanooga versus Myers, and City of Chattanooga versus Kevin Davis. The last one being, I think, 2001. A 16-year-old case that made it very clear cities have no punitive authority. They have authority only to fine civilly. Now that's a quasi-criminal, quasi-civil arrangement, but fines are in the nature of liquidated damages. They are not punitive, and the constitutional clause that Mr. Hinton convinced the city council to ignore, the $50 fine clause, says that there cannot be any fine apart from a trial, and that has to be criminal trial, right? You don't have criminal trials here. We have civil trials only. So this is, in my analysis, an abusive assertion of power against innocent people. And what I bemoan is the lack of sense of grievance. There's just not a lack of sense of grievance here, even among people such as Erskine Oglesby. Erskine Oglesby is a new city council member, and his comments to me yesterday in an interview, I'd say leave something to be desired. He does not have a sense of oppression. He does not have a sense of offense at the idea of a servitude. All right, a servitude is that in which you are obliged to serve another. Either you are obligated to act or you are prohibited from acting. That is a servitude. And here he is.
Here's Erskine Oglesby on the Airbnb ordinance.
I think those citizens that want to continue to do what they're doing legally within the confines of the rules, I think it's fine.
What about the people in Glenwood and other parts of the city who are now being barred from the use of their major investment, their houses?
I wouldn't quite say they were being barred, but
notice they are being barred and they face civil sanction. But Erskine Oglesby does not see this bar or ban or prohibition as something that's wrong. He doesn't have a sense of grievance on behalf of the people in the city whom he represents. Again, he represents people in the whole city, not just his district. Maybe just poetically, maybe symbolically, he does. But and he does have his constituents. But here he's saying he's saying there's no antithesis. There's no antithesis between liberty and compulsion.
Within a year, we're going to reevaluate the program, and they'll have an opportunity at that point to become part of it. But we spent quite a bit of time, actually a year before I even came on board, discussing this. So we'll have a chance to look at it after a year and see what happens.
And the district size would likely be enlarged from these talks with members of cities, residents of Chattanooga, right? The district will get bigger to include more people.
Yeah, absolutely. If that's what the people want, that by design, we wanted to be able to expand and not contract. So within a year, if there's other communities that want to expand and become a part of it, hey, it's going to be a good thing for everybody.
So in that year, the people who are they're under threat of enforcement if they continue having short-term vacation rentals in their homes outside the district and outside the claims of the ordinance, right? So they're
those individuals, that are part of the program, and make sure everybody's served. We're not going to discriminate against anybody. It's not going to be a heavy-handed approach. We're just going to make sure the citizens of Chattanooga are served adequately.
So your hope is that the enforcement mechanism will not be aggressive, tough, and angry.
I can't say what it's going to look like because we're still working that part out. So I can't say one way or another how tough or lax it's going to be. I just want to serve those people who are working within those areas and support those that are not to become compliant at some time in the future.
This is David Tulis, and people in Chattanooga are compliant by training. We've been trained to be compliant. We've been trained to not see the city council's vote yesterday as something that is highly offensive. It's highly offensive to many parts of Chattanooga. It's highly offensive to people who we would like to come to Chattanooga as visitors. We would like them to come to visit here and maybe relocate here. I talked with people yesterday who say that, for example, one young woman who's recently married, who's expecting, who spoke to the council, Lexi Bozarth, she said that many people who were among the 200 visitors she had staying at her Airbnb house have decided to move here. And she met one or two of the folks who were her clients or her customers in her house for rent, became her best friends, and now they're resident in Chattanooga. They love Chattanooga so much by visiting here that they moved here, and she says she keeps up with him. Now, there was one vote yesterday against this ordinance, and the motives are unclear to me. In her comments to me yesterday, Demetrius Coonrod, also new on the council, indicated that it seemed rather like an illiberal discriminatory practice to allow some to have Airbnb and others not.
Here's Demetrius Coonrod.
Just feel like that people with large properties deserve the opportunity to run a short-term vacation rentals, and I wanted, additional communities to be included. So that was it.
So the map has a problem because it excludes people from a profitable use of their homes.
Right. Absolutely.
So are you suggesting that there should not have been a map, that somehow this sector of...
She is suggesting that. She's suggesting that the map is wrong and that what we had before was best just left alone. But of course, the free market argument about zoning is that it's unconstitutional and that it is equally infringing upon innocent people as the proposed map.
The marketplace should have been left unmolested.
Yeah, it could have just stayed like it's been being. They just go to planning and apply to be rezoned, or let it go out to the communities. And if anybody opposed it, they just come say, hey, we don't want this to happen in our communities. But instead, that process has been removed with the overlay. So
there is something you might say courageous in the city council. The council is defying the internet. It's defying relationships made online between people from different parts of the world through that server farm, that server system, which is Airbnb. It is saying we want to control things. We want to have local economy, and that is a kind of interesting observation that Russell Stroud, our news director, makes, that the vote to ban Airbnb in large parts of Chattanooga and allow it in others is not just arbitrary and capricious. It's a kind of economic nationalism, except it's not a nation in view. It is a city. We are in charge here. We make decisions for the people, as it were. We, the city council, in a kind of proprietorship. There is a sense in the council members that we own the people. We own the city. The city is ours to control as if it were our property. We are going to pass this ordinance. And look, are we not courageous? Are we not bold? Are we not standing for local values? You can see in their innocence, as it were, these good points. Yesterday, I took up an exercise of trying to make the argument for the ordinance, even with some of its proposed amendments included, in its best light. Put the ordinance in its best light. It is illegal, and it's illegal, and therefore it's courageous, right? The council acting in its own interest to regulate this market and to take a free action and make it an act of permission is courageous, right? If you're doing something illegal, you must believe it's true, right? There must be some necessity, so urgent, so local, so caring for local people, so caring for local economy, so loving of Chattanooga, that we are going to do this thing. It's illegal. It may be, there are critics that say it's illegal, but it doesn't really matter, because we're showing character. We are not going to humiliate ourselves under the nattering of constitutional prohibitions and the nattering of constitutional rights. That's just noise. Okay, we are here. We're on the ground. We're the people in charge. We have to face the people. We have to face economic issues as the city council, and therefore, we are going to boldly pass this system with its surveillance. There is a surveillance system that's going to be raised, just like the Beijing wall in keeping out bad ideas in China. The same system. Chattanooga and Beijing are very similar. And I'm sad. I'm sad that the city council has not done better. And though Mrs. Coonrod may have voted for right reasons, she may have voted for perhaps wrong reasons against the ordinance. Her area includes Glenwood. Glenwood apparently had a lot of opposition to it, according to some reports. So maybe she was just doing what her people wanted. I would like to esteem her and contribute to her the best motives, and that would be, as she says, as you heard her say yourself, that she didn't like the fact that there were an exclusion, a kind of discrimination against whole bodies of homeowners here in Chattanooga. That to her seems unjust. Demetrius Coonrod is the only one who voted the right way yesterday, the only city council member. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader, Nooga Radio.